Za'imas, good morning. It is my honor and distinct pleasure to provide this land acknowledgement for the Idaho Nonprofit Center Conference of 2022. I appreciate your decision to set time aside to acknowledge the history of Indigenous people of the land that now comprises the state of Idaho. The purpose of a land acknowledgement is to recognize and respect Indigenous people as traditional stewards of this land and the enduring relationship that exists between Indigenous people and their traditional Aboriginal territories of the land upon which we all currently live and work. Acknowledging Indigenous people's territory is a way to recognize their presence both in the past and the present. By this land acknowledgement, you may learn new information that may spur you to explore the history about the Indigenous people's territory upon which you live. My name is Antoinette Cavanaugh. I am a proud member of the federally recognized tribe of the Shoshone and Bannock people, two of the tribes that comprise the historically known Boise Valley people. The Aboriginal territories upon which Idaho is now comprised includes the tribes commonly known as the Shoshone Bannock tribes, the Coeur d'Alene, the Confederated Salish Kootenai tribes, the Nez Perce, and the Shoshone Paiute tribes. Reservations upon which tribal councils govern were established through a number of treaties. Each tribe is considered a sovereign nation if they are federally recognized, and as such, tribes retain their inherent right to power and self-govern. It is a common mistake that reservations are tribal land or Indian land, for it was only through the Indian Removal Act and subsequent treaties by the U.S. government that Indigenous people of North America were removed from their ancestral homelands to government-established reservations and colonies. Specific to the tribes located within Idaho's geographic boundaries, treaties of friendship were often used by the U.S. government to bring about resolutions to conflicts and to ensure amicable future relationships between the nations involved. Treaties were utilized to reduce access to Aboriginal land that sustained the lifeways of the Indigenous people. As an example of treaties in Idaho, in 1855, treaty negotiations took place at Walla Walla, where the Nez Perce negotiated retention of approximately 7.5 million acres to be protected as the tribe's exclusive reservation. Oftentimes, mass trespass and theft took place within the Nez Perce tribe's reservation after gold was discovered. Encroachment was inevitable, as gold fed greed. Instead of protecting the reservation from encroachment, the federal government forced the tribe into a second treaty in 1863, which reduced the reservation to over 750,000 acres. And then because of timber trespass, another treaty was formulated in 1868, further reducing their reservation land holdings. The Boise Valley Treaty, signed on October 10th of 1864 by Idaho Territorial Governor and Superintendent of Indian Affairs Caleb Lyons and the Boise Valley people, is yet unratified by Congress. Thus, the title to the land has never been relinquished. By treaty, the Boise Valley people would, quote, release all right, title, and interest to all lands to 30 miles on each side from the center of the Boise River and to all other country drained by the tributaries of the Boise from its mouth to its source, except so much as the government of the United States shall deem proper and set apart as a reservation or any other location that may set apart for our use. with the right of equally sharing the fisheries of said river with the citizens of the U.S., provided that the U.S. will make the same provisions for our welfare that the U.S. have made with the most favored tribes with whom it has Indian treaties. Most of the indigenous people of the Boise Valley were marched to the reservation from the Boise Valley area in 1869, when gold and silver were discovered in the Boise Valley, despite the fact, again, that Congress has not ratified the treaty. Removal and forced march of the Boise Valley people to the federally designated reservations located hundreds of miles away from their ancestral lands began. Many individuals perished along the way. In some cases, when people refused to leave, they were imprisoned at Fort Boise, Fort Simcoe, and Fort Vancouver in what is now known as the state of Washington. Indigenous people were forced to stay on the reservations and could not leave. It was not until June 2nd of 1924 that Native Americans were considered citizens of the United States. The Shoshone and Bannock people had long occupied the territory of Idaho and nearby areas. They were not disrupted by settlers until the late 1840s and 1850s, when immigrant wagon trains increasingly crossed their Aboriginal territory. In the 1850s, the Shoshone, led by Chief Pocatello, attacked immigrant parties in an effort to drive them off of their ancestral lands. The Bear River Massacre occurred on January 29th of 1863 by Colonel Patrick Connor, who led his troops against the Shoshone people, killing over 400 people, including women and children. Chief Pocatello sued for peace and agreed to relocate in 1868 to the Fort Hall Indian Reservation, which was established on June 14th of 1867 by U.S. President Johnson by executive order. The following year, on July 3, 1868, the tribal leadership signed the Fort Bridger Treaty, which affirmed that the newly established reservation would become the permanent home for the Shoshone and Bannock people. The Coeur d'Alene Treaty took place on September 17th of 1857 after the battle between the tribes and Colonel Steptoe. The established reservation is only a fraction of their original Aboriginal land base of the Coeur d'Alene. In more recent history, governmental representatives have begun to acknowledge Indigenous communities and this history. On June 8th of 2017, Boise Mayor Dave Beater issued a proclamation honoring the original Boise Valley people in an effort to expand public understanding of local history and so that healing could begin. Also, in a historic first, on October 14th of 2019, Idaho's Governor Brad Little proclaimed every second Monday in October as Indigenous Peoples Day. Today, land acknowledgement is a powerful first step to honor and recognize the Indigenous peoples of the land on which we work and live. Continuing to build diverse, inclusive, and equitable systems where tribal entities are welcome goes far to improve our society as a whole. While Indigenous people representing many tribes live throughout the state of Idaho today we honor the history, the continued work, and efforts of the 5 recognized tribal nations in Idaho who work to preserve cultural lifeways, to continue work centered on economic and social justices, and contributions to engage in environmental preservation of the Shoshone Bannock tribes, the Coeur d'Alene, the Confederated Salish Kootenai tribes, the Nez Perce, and the Shoshone Paiute tribes. I invite you to learn more about the Indigenous people, their Aboriginal lands, and their history that now comprises the state of Idaho. Aish Winotsa. This is done in deep respect. Thank you.